Faye did that, I think.
Yes.
Thank you, Faye. If everybody thinks that's great, then I get a motion to approve those minutes from June 16th.
So moved.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And you have a copy of those, we will sign them right now on the spot. Thank you. First case on the agenda is case number RZ-08-21-06. Madison Land Holdings LLC, Mr. Paolo Bannon has submitted an application to rezone 6-acre portion of a 39 1/10 acre parcel from R1 limited residential to M1 limited industrial with conditions. The applicant has submitted offers letter limiting the M1 zone area exclusively to a storage facility, otherwise known as a mini storage units, used. A conceptual site plan has been submitted with the application showing 7 mini storage structures and 2 structures measuring 65 feet by 200 feet and 5 the structure measuring 65 by 150 feet. If approved, an official site plan submittal would be required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved by the Board of Supervisors. The subject parcel located on Fishback Road, Route 772, to date does not have a postal address. The parcel is identified on Madison County Tax Map 40-20. Mr. Webb, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. So we're going a little low tech tonight. So Bruce is out of town, and I didn't set up the microphones. I figured we could make it tonight the old-fashioned way. So apologize for that. Except Bruce, our IT person, is not here. On the building, I'm hoping that this is the last meeting we have here. We're hoping that by the middle of August we can get in it. Jamie, building official, is not real positive, but that will have IT equipment, speakers, and all that all built in, so that will make those type of things easier. So as of now, the joint meeting is scheduled for the fire hall, and should be determined as far as if we're back here in a month. On this particular case, I think the ad sort of says it all. You can see we did get some measurements on some property lines that Mr. Van provided me, and I took the survey, and well, it's not a survey, but it is, I guess, taking measurements. It's most from a survey. And you can see that we have on one of the pages, one of the exhibits shows where the 6 acres would be, which I think is obviously an important part. That's exactly what we're talking about. I think that is demonstrated by the, again, the exhibit and packet. I did get a letter from VDOT. You see this? I just got that back yesterday afternoon. I'm going to call in and talk to Mr. Moore. I have read it, and I don't quite, the site plan will be required for the post interest in Fishback Road, Route 722, so please know that the site plan must show conformance to VDOT Road Design Manual, appendices E1 and F, as well as other applicable standards, regulations, or requirements. We will, at some point in the site plan to us, we will require an engineered entrance, so the big question, and why I need to talk to them is, we're looking at a deceleration lane, and that's always a concern road going to the property, if this were approved. Maybe trying to figure out a time frame for how that road will be approved. I think the applicant will probably would like to go with a graded gravel road to begin with, and as it builds out, maybe as other parts of the property build out, then that road can be improved, paved. So between now and August 4th, we'll need to kind of work on that a little bit and get some sort of specific agreement hammered out. But really just need to kind of be clear with VDOT, because I still need to get enlightened a little more what they're recommending. And again, we expect this, if it were to be approved, to be done in phases. It's not gonna build every building right away. So, we could at least recommend that maybe improvements to the road, to the actual site, we could tie sort of, improvements to that as it builds out. So that's something we can work with, we work up to now in August 4th. Other than that, I've been down to the site and walked on it. There's actually a service road, gravel driveway, you can see the car. The truck was parked in the Pitcher County truck. That's actually that is on an adjacent property also owned by Madison Land Holdings. It's very close to that property line. This would not be the entrance to the property, it'd be a new entrance. Actually goes back to the sewer plant. I did drive back to the sewer plant, and it's a really heavily wooded site, and potentially that could also be some of the existing wood could serve as a buffer, a visual buffer as well. So that's another kind of on my list to sort of talk to Mr. Van about. But any other questions for me on this?
I didn't see that letter from VDOT, was that in?
It's right here.
Down on
I
our website?
printed it out.
Could you bring us over some copies, please?
Yeah.
Is that in the spread?
That's all.
Any questions from the planning commission for?
Yes, is it customary to not necessarily have an 911 address at this point? Will it? It will though. Will one be assigned?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We don't have-
Usually when we put the foundation to one of the buildings,
Okay.
that's when the one address would be assigned.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a quick question, Lee. We talk about, him wanting to put gravel in, and I understand that a gravel road, because he may build one lot of buildings to start with, and then work forward from there. And of course, expense is everything. When you talk to VDOT or whatever, will all the VDOT work have to be done at one time? Because with so many units, you only gonna get so much traffic, and then the traffic will increase as he builds out. So we'd be able to talk to VDOT and do some, and then make it better as he goes along, rather than have to do everything up front.
Yeah, that's why I want to talk to him, because I don't think that's really addressed in that letter, so that's why I want to talk to him a little more in depth. But that's, what you just said is what they have told me is acceptable in other projects, so I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case here, is they wouldn't require anything up front.
But as long as the entrance meets the VDOT's requirement for this application, I understand where you're coming from. This applicant could save money in the long run.
Well, and build it as he builds out.
As long as it meets the specifications for this application, VDOT.
Yeah, I think that includes
Build
the
the
entire.
entrance, I'll build the entrance to VDOT specs in asphalt, then we'll put gravel. Once you get in those things.
I mean, really, the issue is whether it's gravel or paved or surface. And at some point, obviously, the surface.
Anything else? Any other questions from Mr. Webb? If not, would the applicant have anything to say on their application?
I don't have anything to add, really. I understand about the VDOT, excuse me, VDOT, you'd have to build a VDOT entrance, commercial entrance. And whatever, even before, when you start the first building, you'll have to do that. But from the VDOT property line into the site itself, we would probably put gravel there until we start building more buildings. And the way I do it, I phase these buildings in. The first one I built in 1983, I built all the buildings at one time. That was a big mistake. That was a big mistake. So what we generally do, we build a couple buildings. When they get 75% full, we'll build some more.
How big is your other site in the county, Mr. O'Bannon? You said you have another one in the county. How many?
I don't have any more in the county.
Okay.
No. No, we have 21 different sites. And probably the largest site is there in Culpeper, it's about 96,000 square feet total area.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Bannon? Any question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience on this application? Comments, statements? One comment on my part. If you're only gonna build this in phases, the application here, this is just a zoning, rezoning request. It's not the actual building, so it would make a difference. Okay, that will come into play when you file for a building permit. Okay, good.
Can I ask that?
As far as how long that site plan is good for, is it good for 1 year, 2 years, till you finish the project? Just
I don't think once the site plan is submitted, I don't think there's an expiration date on the plan.
no expiration.
Shouldn't be.
I think the ordinance can, but.
Just wanted to throw that out there. More comments on that from the planning commission? If not, moving on. Next case number 08-21-07. Amend the zoning ordinance specifically deleting, amending portions of Article 14, general provisions, 14.1-1, 14.1-2, 14.1-3, 4, 5, and 14.2, and 14.2A. If approved, the proposed amendment would eliminate the requirement that health department get a water and well approval before any building permit is issued. Does that sum it up? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I know we talked about it at the last meeting. Most of this is simple. Deleting some items from the ordinance. And this was something that really was the planning commission or myself, it was really sort of a building official. And I know we heard some folks last week talk about this from the building community, so I think the biggest issue as I see it's really a timing. The contractors, the well is generally the last part of the last thing that's done when you're halfway, 2/3 way through construction, then you sort of engage the well drillers schedule, and that's sort of the last thing done with the health department. I guess doing it up front, I mean, there's obviously a benefit to it. You do have a well when you start, and you're going to have one anyway. But it seems to sort of, at least with the builders, doing it up front, sort of throws their timing off, and sometimes leaves builders with large gaps waiting for the well driller. So, given that we're sort of an anomaly in Madison, and the builders seem to prefer this, building official seems to think he's never heard of it doing it up front. And then some of the other things in the ordinance that we're deleting, like 14.2A. Jamie said that's in the Virginia Uniform Building Code, and that sometimes does change. He says there's just no reason to cite it in the zoning ordinance, that it's an it's actually in another part of our county code, according to him, I haven't seen it, it says it is. But it's really a Virginia building code, standard, and it's even cited incorrectly, he says, in some of here. So that's the reason, just to delete that, you know, those are things that have to be done for the state building code, he just doesn't see any need for it to be in the zoning ordinance, so I would agree with him. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty straightforward ask, is that it be amended or to do it again, so otherwise, any other questions for me?
If this was submitted to the Board of Supervisors for approval, amendments of the ordinance, what you have drafted up here would be submitted to them.
Yeah, they looked at it at their last meeting, and I think there were at least 4 people that were here that seemed to be nodding that they felt, you know, told me to move forward with this, so.
Okay, one other question here in your write-up on this thing on June 10th, you said red equals text proposed to be amended or deleted, and you have one red in there, I'm assuming you're not proposing to delete all of that.
So that's a good question. I think that is it. So the no building permit, so I would say the red, the only one that I would see that is an addition, everything is a deletion.
In red,
Yes.
as,
The only one that is not a deletion, I think, would be 14.1-4. That should be zoning permits, not building permits.
Nate? Nate?
Yes.
I asked you to look into this, you have any questions on it?
No, I didn't look into it, to be honest.
Okay. Any questions from the planning commission, from Mr. Webb?
I have one question. During the initial discussion of this, there were several comments about doing this would make it easier for the property owner to work with the bank to get mortgages. Am I correct in understanding that was said? It's been a long time since I dealt with the bank on a mortgage, but is it common practice to approve a mortgage where there is no well or approved septic system in place?
So,
If that's out of your area.
yeah, I usually mortgage companies at the end, they don't really get too involved in the construction. If it's a new home construction, they usually just wanna see a CO at the very end of the process. As far as, you know, the building codes and, you know, once at the end, they just ask for a CO. So I don't really think, could be wrong, but at least my experience, I have a little experience in real estate and appraising, is that generally the banks, for new construction are just, you know, do we have a CO? You know, certain occupancy when it's all done. I don't think they usually get too involved, but.
Okay, if that being the case, then the timing of the well installation doesn't really affect the ability of the person to borrow the mortgage money anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So it's just a matter of convenience for the contractor.
That's what it seems to be, that they prefer doing it this way, and it's common everywhere, you know, everywhere else does it this way, that's what you hear.
Mr. Carpenter, one
Yes.
point of clarification on that, and I've done construction loans in my private practice. Typically, the well is one of the things that is scheduled pursuant to the draw schedule that the bank comes up with. I have never had a situation where a property did not have water, but I do know that I want to say it's usually the second or third draw. It's typically not the first draw, but it is sometime before the final draw typically that they look for the well to be completed. But that varies from bank to bank.
So it is something they consider in their mortgage application.
Not as a specific detail, other than to say, draw 2 will be paid upon, and then, you know, whichever draw it is, there are certain things that have to be done. The framing needs to be completed, needs to be under roof, or whatever the discussions are. It's more a function of the cash flow than it is anything else.
Comment.
Pete, that's something first thing. Pete?
Yeah, and I don't think it would affect it at all, like Sean said, because you gotta piece of raw land that you're putting up for collateral, and you're not gonna go out there and drill the well. Before you get that loan, you're gonna use that loan, most likely to drill the well, so I don't think it would affect it at all.
Mr. Regler?
From the standpoint of a plumber and a plumbing contractor, I thought when it was enacted, it was the stupidest thing that California done. I mean, come on, you got weather in the wintertime, you may be 2 months before you can get the damn drill machine into on the property. And you gonna hold up the building for that long a time? It's crazy, it's plain crazy.
That's what I've heard a few times.
Peter?
Well, as I said at the last workshop, I came to see this from the perspective of a contractor. I previously considered building from the perspective of an individual home builder. And I still think that my suggestion of a warning to individuals who are building homes that if they don't know there's water, they may want to find out before they spend a whole lot of money. And that was based not only in my own recent experience, but something that Betty Grayson told me before she retired, where apparently an individual built a house, or had a house built before the well was built, and then there was no water. And they really had to carry a situation to get water to that person. So I think that advising people in that position, that they could be at risk is very desirable. These contractors, they know what the risk is, and they don't need to be advised of it, but somebody's building a house for their own use, could well use the warning.
When you're talking about one person here in Madison that had that happen to, and how many houses they built in Madison? So we're gonna make a ruling to accommodate one person. That's it.
It's not a ruling, Danny. I'm not suggesting that the proposal shouldn't be passed, and I can see from the standpoint of a contractor that the current situation doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but there's another perspective as well.
Okay, please.
Hey, Mr. Moscow, my comment briefly.
Yes, sir.
I think the simple way to do it is just to include in the application that the well can be drilled at any time, but the burden is on the property owner. If there's no water, it's not the county's responsibility, it's the owner. In other words, so long as the risk is disclosed to them, they make a decision with their builder, and if things turn out badly for them, for that 1 in 50-year case, as Mr. Trigger alluded, they have at least been put on notice of that possibility.
That's exactly right.
Just like Don was saying, coffee might be hot.
Dan?
I was gonna say the same thing. I talked to someone who, the well cost them a whole lot more money. They had to dig 6 holes, and so money that they thought they could spend other places in their house, they couldn't. It had to go towards the well. So they said, yes, she thought that they should dig the well first. And, Cardi brought up at the supervisors meeting why this, rule came into effect was because of, maybe, did you wanna say?
I will, I was contacted by one of the Board of Supervisors that's on the board when they put this in place. So it's the late 80s, just to give you history, late 80s, severe drought in Madison and all over Albemarle. There were 3 or 4 houses in Madison that could not get water. And thanks to their neighbors, they were able to drill and get an easement, drill on the neighbor's property and bring water over to theirs. But in the meantime, there were lawsuits in Albemarle filed by folks that had built a house, could not get water, so they had filed a lawsuit against the county of Albemarle saying that the county of Albemarle should hook them up to public water since they were unable to get water. He did not know what the results of those lawsuits were, but they go, okay, let's get ahead of the curve, put this in, and stop any liability to the county. So that's the history of why the Madison board put that on the books.
Okay.
I think the method though, since 1980, has changed drastically.
Granted.
Because of the fact that now, and since the 20th century, they got all this fracking they do, and they can find water most of the time by fracking, where you can't get water anywhere else. So the method of drilling a well and finding the water has really, really changed in the last 20 years.
Anybody else?
Kind of an administrative question. If we chose to go with just adding the disclaimer to the building permit application, would that require any amendment or anything else in this?
Oh, no, not for an application. And we probably want to do it, we
Change the
we
wording.
want a little check in the initial beside it, sort of like that, just to.
Well, this is in the building permit application section for proposing to make this amendment. Wouldn't it be, sounds like from what I'm hearing from everybody here, a statement to the fact that the onus is on the person filing the application for the building permit, whether or not they can get water. Some kind of warning or notification up front. That way there's never any question. I heard that suggestion from the county attorney and several people here. I think everybody sounds like they're in the planning commission supports this proposal. If there's some kind of warning that is placed in this proposed redo of this ordinance.
Well, on one of the sections we're deleting, just say 14-15, we could definitely replace that bonded feasibility permit or swimming pool or owner must comply with, state law building code. We could simply make a statement and put that, and add that, and I'll just, I can think of something now by Sean, and something to the effect of, this is on the, you can't find water, that's not kind of a problem. We'll say a little different
Put
than
on
that.
notice.
Right, we'll say a little different than that.
With that, I think it sounds like, you have approval, I think, Mr. Krieger.
On, 14-2, 14-2A, you said Jamie had said that that's somewhere in the building code, that's somewhere doubling up.
Yeah, he said that's in the statewide.
Statewide.
He just said,
Can we get verification of that?
I mean, sure, yeah, I mean,
Like the code numbers, which
Right.
I'm sure it's gonna be in the residential code and uniform state building code. That's where he's gonna find it. I would
yeah, he just says this is repeating, things that are from the building code.
Well, I got the code books, so I'll
It's
check
just not,
it.
he says just not, and again, I'm going from what he's talking about, it seems like he knows what he's talking about. He just said it's not necessary to be in the residential.
Okay, any other comments on that? Any other suggestions?
On 14-1-2, application for building permits upon approval or denial by the building inspector may be appealed to the Board of Supervisors. You're doing away with that?
Yeah, that actually is not correct.
Board of Supervisors?
Application for building permits upon a prior approval, not, that would actually be the building code.
It would be what?
The building code, what do they call it?
Technical review board,
The review board.
yeah, that's where that'll go.
So should that be?
But that's already mandated by the state code. Yeah, we could change that to just, I forget the official name of that, building.
Building Code Board of Appeals.
The building code.
Isn't that what it?
Yeah.
I think
I'll
it's pretty
check
close.
with Jane to make sure that is indeed,
Well, if it's coming to us, it's the state technical review board.
Oh, that is on the board.
I'll say on that.
okay, say that, okay. I'll ask Jamie if that's truly, because he just said strike that one too.
And
Well,
that's-
I know it doesn't go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, I mean, that's incorrect.
That's what the technical review board because if you've got a problem with the building official,
It's denied, right?
in anywhere, it comes before
Well,
us.
I'll ask them if that's okay, if we just put Board of Zoning Appeals with the technical review.
Anything else from the planning commission? Sounds like we beat that one up pretty good. And Faith, you don't have to, anything else on that? But they can track this up, and we will proceed from there. I'm sure you have other things, but, any comments from the members on this issue? Okay. Thank you. Next case is case number 08-21-08. Amending the zoning ordinance specifically deleting Article 12-1, 12-1-2, types of signs and equipment. We have already gone over this before, and that's gonna be on the agenda and placed on notification in the newspaper for the public hearings or public hearing. Right?
Yeah, I think those two we probably have talked about.
Yes, we beat that up now.
Okay, no worries. We know what to do.
So I got any comments on it from the commission tonight? Next case is 08-21-09, amending the zoning ordinance specifically Article 14-1, standards for issuance of special use permit, and 14-4-2. If approved, these amendments would clarify conditions, conditional approval of special use permit by the planning commission and the board of supervisors. That's one that we call over also, and that one would be placed in the newspaper and advertised also.
So be in tomorrow.
Anybody got any comments on that one? Okay. Next item for discussion and review. Item 5-A, consideration to amend zoning ordinance. James and Jean Bill request consideration to amend Article 14-19, commercial solar energy facility. B, the location setbacks, include minimum setback requirements. If amended, the bills would subsequently request a rezoning of 91.8 acres, which is currently zoned A1, and will be rezoned to M1, limited industrial use, to develop a solar farm on tax map 58-12-C. We were talking about this before, and the issue here seems to be the requirement on the setbacks. Is that correct?
That's
The
correct,
holdup
so,
would be absent that.
right, so the conversation left last time, Mr. Beal and, Tippett, Mr. Tippett? Yes. Yep. You know, with the 300 feet versus the 100 feet perimeter setback, and they've been dealing with REC and doing some analysis with them that, they need to do, maybe they can fill us in how those conversations have been going. But, the decision, I guess, in their camp has been that they would, to move forward with this, that they would need that, 300 feet buffer reduced to 100 feet. Now, I know just a few years ago, the planning commission worked on this, and, you know, it's been limited to M1. Of course, anyone can apply to rezone a property, obviously, but it's been limited to M1. You came up with a fairly straightforward, but pretty clear supplemental regulations for solar farms, commercial solar. We now have a potential application, and the first thing they want is to go into to an area that's not in one to be zoned, and also an amendment. I did today happen to read an article from Spotsylvania County about a large solar farm. It's thousands of acres, that just came online. As part of it came online. So the process they had to follow was rezoning, special use permit, and then site plan. So we have as I said in the email, just to make it clear, this is a pretty, if this were to go and follow this process, and just say they can get approval each step, we don't know if that's the case, but you're looking at or at least a text amendment, rezoning, So looking at, 4 public hearings, I think one thing we've learned, the more moving parts we have to a process and ordinance, sometimes the more you open yourself up for scrutiny. We don't mind scrutiny, that's not a problem, but the way it's, the path forward, the applicant is this process, so to make sure that they understood. I kind of prefer just straightforward one. Take the process, and it was what it is. At the end of the day, is that appropriate site for a solar facility? Regardless of the zoning, is it something that the planning commission would recommend, or the board would apply? I don't know the answer to that. I think that at least initially, at least the planning commission, you have to give them some thought, and at least, Mr. Carpenter said, kind of respect the place that work. And I agree, I think it does look at the place that work, but,
The whole issue here is just a setback.
right, that's it. So, as I see it, I'll step back, because we do have a zoning text amendment, it's on our fee schedule, and some communities actually have a form, you can apply for a zoning text amendment, pay the fee. So if that's what they want to do to move forward, I don't see any reason why they couldn't apply and pay the fee and say, this is what we would like to see changed, and the cards may fall as they may. So I just want to be clear in the process, the applicant, to planning commission, to the board, to everybody, this is how this would flow. And to a certain degree, I mean, if you're willing to amend the ordinance, then I guess that sort of leaves the door open that you'd probably be willing to at least entertain the rezoning and so forth, so.
Okay. If that application for rezoning is submitted, that's fine. Faye, in the meantime, I know this was done many years ago, and we've all worked on that. Mike Fisher and I attended many meetings on that.
But I have some questions right now.
Right, is that for them or the applicants? I'm sure.
I don't know who can answer them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, it's the last time we talked about this, with my questions also. Before I can really even think about how we want to, I'm certainly not opposed, I'll go on record saying I'm definitely not opposed to having a large-scale solar facility, even in that site, which I hadn't thought of before. I didn't think about it to be, but that certainly would be something I would be ready to consider. But before that even, I noticed in your statement on page 2, you've requested that the following items be provided. Conceptual site layout, that you have probably. Megawatt generation capability, I want to know that. That's one of mine. We do have a regulation in ours on how much that is.
And that was left up in the air last time too.
It was, and I'd like to know what your capability would be, and I have from REC, it's on my phone, I can find it, how much they said we used, and it has to do with 50% of the
Yes,
usage.
we can answer that, now.
Okay. Because I need to know that.
Let's just keep the process here, this is related, so then applicants will come up and you can ask them questions.
Well, okay, and the other thing too, first before that, do you have some kind of a deal with REC at this point that they are going to accept the generation of the, I don't know that. That's what I want to know. Whoever can answer it.
I guess my question is for Lincoln or for Sean, and I guess, working through this process, why wouldn't it be possible, and I understand what the ordinance says, why wouldn't it be possible if we're gonna do a rezoning to look at the amendment the same time we look at the rezoning and put those two together? Because if you did the amendment, then you didn't do the rezoning, then I just think that those two go hand in hand, and I don't know the legal part of it. If we could put those together, it just seems like to me it would make it a whole lot more understanding.
I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of it, actually. Yeah, and that's actually would be a good way to sort of at least streamline the amendment. John, you?
Well, I think that certainly makes sense. I recall this was a point of contention whenever this, ordinance was, developed by the planning commission several years ago. And I think this is the first time anybody has applied under it. So maybe this is in fact the appropriate time, because it's kind of hard to write ordinances in a vacuum without knowing what the practical effects are. But yeah, I think that the two happening concurrently would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you could do the special use, you have to be rezoned before you can do the special use permit, but I didn't think, but that's actually, yeah, that would, I can see no issue with that.
First issue is setback. That's what we're talking about
I don't
here.
know what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I have a comment I guess.
Steve?
I'm assuming that this setback is based on, we were at the time envisioning a larger facility, basically. This would not be a problem except for the fact that it is only 90-some acres. The 300 feet is designed to mitigate impact, especially visual impact on the neighbors. Would it be possible to simply work with the applicant to develop other mitigation, more specifically the buffering and so forth, that the board of supervisors could kind of trade off for the 300 foot, rather than amend the thing immediately after we basically approved it? Is that within the board of supervisors' purview to say, under these conditions, then we can reduce the setback? If the
Yeah, I think if the setback is a hard 300 feet in the code, then you would not be able to sort of, I mean, it'd be ideal, but that's written kind of in stone, so I don't think that would be great if you do that, but I think because it's, I mean, I personally, and again, so I kind of like, when it's a special use permit or a rezoning, I like things to be a little, maybe less rote. Because it's, I have often found that right out the gate, the first applicant wants something different than you worked so hard on. So I'm just kind of a favor, just as a general philosophy, I sort of think sometimes with these, if it's a special use permit, less is more, just because it always seems like you put a standard, you have a good reason behind it, you think it through, and again, you're really thinking of larger sites that make sense. But I do not believe, you would have to amend the code, in order to do any kind of horse trading, I guess.
You do not, or you do?
The code would have to be amended, there wouldn't be any way to administratively waive it or change it based on you.
I do think that, Steve's thought is a good one. And, my initial instinct is that, that provision of the code could be amended to make it more flexible, make this setback issue more flexible.
Rules on horse trading. Yes.
Not just drop it to 100 feet for the first applicant's approval, but to include some negotiation.
No.
I think about it to be about specifics, but I do think you could craft a language that would serve the county's interest. Every county has competing interests here, as I think Pete mentioned. The fee the county receives goes up the larger the facility is.
Why don't we do this? Faith is chair of that committee and will handle this. That application is filed for amending the zoning ordinance. All of these things will be taken into consideration and we're talking about here tonight. And, we can go from there. Or we can sit here all night and talk about it, and I think those are all things, as as you and Steve and Faye have pointed out, that can be taken into consideration in the rewrite of this ordinance if that comes back. Mr. Jackson, you have something to say?
Yeah, and it's, Sean Gregg's gonna help me with this. There are specific rules on government and horse trading with development. I think they just passed another round like maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. It is very specific. And we, as the Board of Supervisors, are certainly not going to break state law horse trading for $30,000 or $40,000 on an annual basis, sorry. Sean Gregg, you got comments on this?
You are exactly right about it, and what it comes down to is what is enforceable. What will happen is we will try to negotiate in good faith. If it turns out that we've gone beyond the scope of what we're allowed to negotiate, that means that whatever concessions were made by the landowner are not enforceable by the county against the landowner. So I think, and I think Mr. Carpenter's right, that perhaps the best way to approach this is to review what our process is and also revisit, and everyone will recall that Ms. Zeus spent a lot of time on this ordinance, looked at ordinances throughout the state, and for that reason, I don't remember the particular details, but 300 feet is what the planning commission recommended to the Board of Supervisors and what the Board of Supervisors approved. I think it does make sense to kind of not quite go back to the drawing board, so to speak, but make sure that what we're doing sets up a platform so that what we can put in the special use permit, if it comes to that, is enforceable.
And wouldn't the setback post rezoning go through the BZA and a variance process?
It would. If an appeal was taken, the appeal of that would be taken to the board of appeals.
You know, you're saying if the applicant doesn't like this, basically wants a smaller setback?
Correct.
They would, I do not, I talked to Clay about this, and we can talk about it some more. That is not a hardship. I mean, just basically, if you don't like the ordinance, I mean, I think the code's pretty clear that you really, in order to be a hardship, you have to basically, not have any economic interest in the property. It's basically taken by the code. This wouldn't be the case, you just wouldn't be able to have a 100-feet setback, so.
And I agree with that, but the practicalities of appeals to the Board of Zoning Appeals, we do not control those outcomes. If the Board of Zoning Appeals decides that something is in fact a hardship, then the burden comes to the county to appeal that decision.
Yeah, it's sort of like the case that we had, we didn't think it was a hardship, but it was a neighborhood, anyway. Yeah, I don't think that would be but we can talk about it, but,
And in that regard, I think we're getting somewhat into the weeds.
Right.
I think the initial threshold is, I think Mr. Carpenter's suggestion is an appropriate way to proceed.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting in the little murky area there.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
It's the haircut.
We still have some information.
I had noticed.
You must have fallen asleep.
Something like that.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Webb?
Mr. Wilkes has a comment.
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
If I'm building a house on a 3-acre lot,
I'm sorry.
what are the setbacks?
That's a different issue, Dennis.
No, it ain't. Let me finish. Say 250 from the road.
It's 100 from the center, right.
Okay. If I'm building a house on a 1,000-acre parcel, what's the setback?
It's the same.
So the size of the parcel doesn't make any difference if you're building the house. You're opening up a can of worms if you change it for a small parcel.
Understand.
Could we still, so that Faye's committee, the information that she was asking from the people?
We're gonna get that. Any further questions for Mr. Webb?
Yeah.
Applicants? Please come up.
Thank you, appreciate it, thank you. We're not gonna have to go through all of these, but, I'll just kind of direct us to the ones that kind of address your questions. Appreciate y'all having us back on the agenda soon.
Welcome back.
like to welcome the Beals and the Weavers for being here with us, and also want to point out that Leon Roth, the founder of the company, is here. So he wanted to be here for to show us support. I'm just going to take you right to the fourth slide that shows the layout, because this is these early slides you've seen, substantially kind of before. The question that was kind of open, and one of the things that we really couldn't answer the last time we were here, is what the configuration of the project could be and what the size could be, and that was because we needed to work with the Rappahannock planning engineers. We've done that, and they told us on that distribution line, it's a 12.5 kilovolt distribution line, they can accommodate kind of approximately 10 to 12 megawatts, and that's those are hard and fast limits. We can't go above that, or we kind of, they won't let us go above that, or it'll jeopardize the grid. So this layout here contemplates, that amount of power, and it's also, much more kind of real world than what you saw last time, because we're taking into account kind of a drainage, an irrigation gully, and some terrain features that we can't build on. So this is approximately an 11 to 12 megawatt project, and where the setback really becomes important for this is this drawing is with a 100-foot setback. So if we had if the setback were larger or significantly larger, it would shrink this project size down to the point where it just wouldn't be feasible to do as a project. So that's kind of the main driver for us in the request. It's not simply so we can just build more. This allows us to build what the utility will let us build, and no more. I think really what now is kind of a related issue is the tree barrier. Mr. Weaver has spoken to the owner of Yoder's Market, and just kind of asked him what he thought about the project. I'm paraphrasing. He did not have any objections to it. He just wanted to make sure that there is a tree barrier between his customers and the farm. And we talked about the tree barrier last time, but on this for tonight, I've actually kind of drawn in where exactly where that tree barrier would go. And I think this is to a point that was made earlier, which is maybe it's the combination of the setback and the tree barrier that accomplishes the goal of kind of visual isolation. So the tree barrier comes along 29 and then goes around the parking lot for Yoder's Market.
Question?
Does the tree barrier, does it go on all four sides? Or?
Well, we've already got trees if you look at the back of the land, there are either trees or a really, a pretty big parcel of land. That's probably about.
There's a big grove of trees that you see from Paragraph Road. It wouldn't allow you to see this.
And we certainly aren't trying to skimp on the number of trees. We just put a tree barrier kind of where it seemed like it would make sense.
I think the zoning ordinance may be more specific on those barriers. Really
Yes, yeah, the zoning ordinance are very, very specific about the size of the trees, the spacing, the density, and we would of course follow the letter of the law on that. Unless anyone, has questions, yeah.
Faith?
I have a question on the picture that shows the location. And it's sort of what you were asking, some of the members were asking a minute ago, like where would the, trees will have to go all the way around. I certainly understand that.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's a totally makes sense. One of my favorite things. But what I do have a question about though, I see how close it would get. I guess I don't visually know, so we'll have to go out there and look.
Right.
Also, it looks like it comes right up to 29, so are we gonna have just 100 feet of trees and right up to 29?
Well, I think, so the ordinance, as was just pointed out, is very specific. But I think, we certainly would be flexible to, if it was decided that it would be better that they were, right on 29. In other words, at the beginning, even in the buffer zone, or I think the ordinance specifies that it's, within a certain distance of the project boundary. So that really wouldn't matter to us. It would be, what would be more important would be what, y'all would want.
Well, first off, on that, you have to, ordinance requires a fencing. Such as that, whether around the tree area, whether it's actually on the inside of that.
Well, from the edge of the pavement, 29 is 50 foot. It belongs to the roadway. It would be another 100 foot as a buffer. So from 29, you would be 150 foot before you could start.
True, okay, I have another question. I'm thinking, I guess, while you're here, a question that only you could probably answer. Comment about the trees, just while this question comes back to my mind. The reason why we were warned to make sure that we put in relative size of tree to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be starting either.
Sure.
And for the first, even Leyland cypress
Yeah.
take a while to grow. So we were warned right away that if you want this to be, screened, you need to start with decent sized trees with the
Yeah,
expectation.
and your ordinance actually specifies that as well. It's 6
And that's
feet.
the reason for it.
Yep.
There was a reason why.
Yep.
And these two people that were mostly with this, plus others came in, and I find my notes, I've got, there were reasons, very specific reasons why, with very, very, very uncomfortable and bad situations that other counties have gone
Yeah.
through.
Well, not much of a barrier while you're waiting for them to grow up.
Yeah, you want something from the get-go that, I like the idea of the pollinators that you talked about and all of that, there would be, you mentioned you would be planting pollinator plants that are good for, would draw pollinators and all. So I would love that. But there was another question. Is the limit on the backside, that's as far down as you can go? In other words, where this is sitting right now on this land, you can't go any further back to maybe.
Yeah, this follows the parcel boundaries of the parcel.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're gonna use the whole 91 acres?
Well, it would be, minus.
Minus whatever, okay.
Yes.
That helps, okay, that's one thing. And when would we get the details, like, I don't guess it really matters, it's whatever you put on there. But I know panels come in various,
Yeah.
sizes or
yeah,
smaller
I know.
than they used to be.
You want to say
storage and
something
all
on
that.
panel sizes?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Lyon Roth.
How you spell that, sir?
LYONROTH. I co-founded Yarrowtech 12 years ago with a partner, exactly for these kinds of opportunities. So it's my first time in Madison County, but I'm learning a lot and I'm enjoying the process. And obviously, as the gentleman mentioned, we're not looking for favors or we're aware of slippery slopes. There's a can-do approach to this that would make sense as far as barriers and cypress trees. Solar panels love pollinators. They don't like shade as much, so that 6 feet cedars grow pretty quickly. But we'll find the right solution without doing something that's inappropriate and obviously completely in conformity with the law. So if there's a variance or text amendment that is integrated into the permit, we'll obviously work closely with the, you know, the phraseology of the request. As far as panels are concerned, we have a choice. So if somebody says, you know, we do a lot of work in Puerto Rico, power is extremely expensive. So if we're charging somebody a certain amount of power, it's about half as much as they would pay for conventional fossil fuel generated power from utility. So they want to put as much of that super duper expensive concentrated power on their roofs because they're land constrained and they just want to reduce their utility bill as much as possible. Here we have the luxury of a little bit more space. We can put in a tractor, which makes it a little bit more expensive, but magnifies meaningfully the amount of hours during the day that we'll be able to optimize the amount of power that we're able to generate. We also think that the tractors are cool. We also think, again, I'm not here to sort of pitch aesthetics. If you look at sort of futuristic renditions of what the world in, you know, in a few years looks like, they almost always have like solar power plants. Some people find them very appealing, some people don't. Obviously the tree barrier requirement is something we will comply with completely from day one. But we also think it's a good teaching opportunity. I know there's a school nearby. I know that we've done this in other places that we work. Teachers plan field trips, and it's, you know, it's where we are and where we're headed. Maybe this much, maybe more. But our commitment to community engagement is real, which is one of the reasons why it was really important for me to dedicate time to get to know some of you and to understand what your concerns are. And the panel choices are plentiful. We tend to work with the higher grade solar panels because in most cases we're trying to optimize the amount of power that we can generate on any parcel of land. We kind of like the trackers because once again, if you have a certain amount of land, you want to, it's the same if you're a farmer and you have crop yields, you want to get the most crops you can from the given acre. So it's not that different in that respect. But my main message to all of you is thanks for giving us the opportunity. I had a chance to meet the leaders in the today as well. And this is kind of why we started the business, to coordinate. One size doesn't fit all, and slippery slopes can be treacherous. But what we learned over the course of the last 12 years is that people are really happy when this works, because it does. And as you mentioned at the outset, there's a county next door that's going through a similar process. Certainly 2 or 3 barriers are better than 12 or 13, but whatever the process is, we're very excited about exploring it together.
Thank you.
I remember.
Any questions?
I could remember. Okay. He came back. But I have actually 2 questions more that I need to clarify from you all while you're here, because if my committee's gonna work on it, I don't wanna have to try to track you all that later, when I can get this answer right now. First of all, one of our requirements, that we need a study done, or at least knowledge of the historical, we have a lot of historical places in our county. I don't know that there's anything within range of, I don't think there's anything there. Some areas in the county, you would have to consider that. We had a lot of battles here, especially in the 1860 war, but before that too. So historical and other kinds of important cultural things are important, that we don't build and distract from that. The other thing was in the ground. Now I think I've heard you all say 2 different ways, 2 different things. The last thing being that when you put the, whatever holds the rocks.
The piles, yeah.
Yes, the piles in, and at the end of the time, the land is supposed to be.
We just pull them right back out.
So if they're truly pulled back out and not cut off 3 feet and all that, that's.
Yeah,
That's
our reclamation bond is to restore the land to 100% of its original state, and that is probably one of the most powerful ways that we can do that.
Okay, that's really important for us. Okay, those 2 questions I have right now.
Thank you.
And as one other thing, as a committee, if we have questions that are more on the specific technical side, so we can really, make sure we have all the answers that we want, that we can get back, we'll you'll give us information, that we can contact you maybe?
Yes, ma'am.
One
Yes.
email or something that would.
Yes, and I'll make sure that, I'll kind of hand out some business cards I'll give to Mr. Webb.
I'm trying not to bother you, because I have to figure a lot of this out.
It's no bother.
I've
That's
gotten
what
to
we're
know
here
a lot-
for.
I've gotten to know a lot of these people around here are putting in solar farms, believe me, when I call them, they know my name. That's how much research I've done.
Thank you. Nan?
Did you say what the size of the panels would be?
They're about 24 by 48 inches. So they're a pretty standard size.
The difference is in output, so it's almost like imagine all cars up the same engine, more or less.
I have a clarifying question.
Nathan?
This is the paperwork we got with it, showed 25.
Yeah, that was the last time we were here, and this is, So this is kind of a hypothetical
Yep.
layout, and this is an engineered layout.
So basically, this was off by pretty far.
Yeah, and we can't get to the engineered one takes a little bit of time. We have to pull in topo information.
So this is accurate.
Yes.
What we learned is not as much of the land is usable.
Yeah,
Which makes the, so what Mr. Cowan's pointing out, we went from about 23 to just a little bit over half that. Which is one of the reasons why the offsets are important, especially if you're putting the trees up, which are also gonna be generating shade. So if you take into account, as you mentioned earlier, 50 plus 100, so it's already 150. You put it 6-foot trees, the trees are getting a little taller, and once we did a deeper dive, we realized that the efficacy of the land is still very compelling, but not nearly as much as these offsets.
So essentially, with the 300-foot setback, it makes the project unusable.
If you look at the renderings, you can even see that'll squeeze out a lot of the those areas that we got.
Anybody else? Pete?
I got a question I guess I wanna ask Sean. I know that the state government is pushing solar really hard. And the state government has changed, the rules and regulations and ordinances, to make it better for people to be able to do solar. So if the state has wrote things that are different than what's in our ordinance, which one do we have to go by?
There's
The state, yes.
Okay, cause there's a lot of rules that the state has come out.
Our permitting, our permitting is, and there's actually, even in this packet, it's really small, because there's a lot of them, but we have 2 tracks from a permitting and approval perspective. So one track is meeting all the requirements that the county ordinance mandates. We've got to meet all of those rules and regulations. And then the second track is a state level, that's PBR.
Yes.
Permit by rule, and we've got to meet all of those.
I understand, but what I was saying, some of the state regulations that I read made it easier than our ordinance was.
Well, from my understanding, it's the county ordinance that rules.
And Mr. Elliott, let me clarify that. If state law specifically does something that we are not restricted, that we are trying to restrict more, state law does control. But remember, all of this would be done in the context of a special use permit. So to the extent that it's done through our special use permit, then they would in fact have to comply with what the term is.
I've got them right
Just
here.
curious.
I'll
That's
read
fair
it.
question.
Wait a minute, one at a time, one at a time. Okay? Okay. Faye, when you go and look at this, assuming the application is filed, look and see if anything we have involves in the state zoning code. Okay? And right now, I do not believe, and we looked at that previously when this was written up, and we did not have anything in there at that time that was in violation of the state code. And I haven't seen anything or anything since then where it would be. And there's been a lot of stuff going on, especially what's going up in Spotsylvania, in Walker County, in that area. So,
I have one question for that. Mike Fisher's no longer on the board, do I have another person, or who's gonna be the committee? You want the residential committee? I mean, I don't know.
yes,
Oh,
since you did this before, you know more
but
about
I had a
it.
special committee for this.
I can fix you one if you like, we can talk about it.
Well, I don't know that everybody wants to work on this. I mean, it might be something that would be specially,
Everybody else here on the planning commission want to help out on that assignment? Nathan will.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay, one person, mine, Steve,
All right. I will be there also to help out.
thank you.
Okay.
That makes it an open meeting now.
Steve?
I'm still trying to kind of get fixed in my mind. You said the panels are 24 inches by 48 inches. So what kind of actual structural height, finished height are we looking at?
4 to 6 feet. 4 to 6 feet.
Not more than 6 feet tall.
Yeah, it's,
So our actual visual sight is not going to.
correct. Yeah, they're not tall.
Not
And the reason for the variation is because they're trackers. You know, in certain rows, you want some of them to be a little bit lower than other ones. And the reason that these are more spread out is also because that first iteration were those were ground mount fixed, and when you have trackers, which as was mentioned earlier, we can get up to 50% more production. We until we knew kind of what the limitation was going to be from REC, we weren't really sure what we had to design to.
You mean the power output?
Yes, sir.
What the grid can.
Is this new engineered drawing factoring the tracking?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, and that's why they're a little further apart, because so you don't get shadowing between the rows.
Anybody else? Thank you, gentlemen, very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Next item on the agenda, we were going to discuss things about the wireless communications facility ordinance change. Since that time, the project has been put on hold indefinitely. So we will not be doing anything else on that project until certain issues are settled.
Yeah, we did meet as a committee, and Mike joined us. We started off talking about the process of addressing possible ordinance change and then bringing it forward ultimately to the board. We intend to talk further on those process issues and look at discussions with later on those. We were going to talk about the substance of what the meeting suggested. We got input from various sources, including Sean, raising the question about the appropriateness of considering amendments to an ordinance that is currently involved in litigation as our wireless communications facility ordinance. We thought about that and decided that is not a good idea, and I think that view has been shared by others. So that's where we are. We have put it on hold. They did being the substance of any possible future amendment. We have not put on hold, however, the process issue of things that
Thank you, Peter. That is on hold. So, bring it notice. Last item on the agenda, I'm gonna have a couple other comments later on. Is this rezoning of ordinance adding single-family detached dwellings by right use in B1, zoning districts, 4 lots on private drive and related family subdivision lots, whatever. What is this, adding single-family homes on right in B1?
Can I backtrack real quick on one thing, just to make sure I'm clear? on the solar. The committee is gonna meet shortly to discuss this. Okay.
If there is an application for amend the zoning ordinance, is what y'all were talking about. Okay. So until we get that, I don't know what we could do.
So the potential
That's
applicant.
a process that, we're gonna go through.
I have a letter in the check right now.
Okay, if they want to move forward with a rezoning and concurrently with, I think it's a good idea to also amend the ordinance. The plan commission and, board of supervisors could entertain that. It could be until September at this point, but is that sort of the consensus that could be, if they want to move forward, then we'll move forward on that.
Well, if they file the application, planning commission will move forward on that.
Okay.
Okay, that's a total separate issue.
But not the amendment part yet. I mean, don't we wanna reset? So the point was to research that, make sure what we were going to amend would be what we
If the
want.
application is filed, then that's all the whole process. What you're talking about. To me,
I'm sorry.
we were talking about that.
Now, I was thinking, if this committee, the committee meets and we're reviewing the ordinance, right? Our current ordinance, to make sure that everything is in line with state and with whatever else we might wanna amend, including the setbacks. I recommend an amendment there. We could, right?
We could do that, but the number one on the list is the setback right now.
I understand,
Okay.
but I'm not, but if you're already gonna tell me you're gonna change it, why meet?
I'm not telling you we're gonna
Okay,
change it.
good, I hope not, no, I mean, okay, just so long as we have a little,
Legislation, it looks like the applicants are gonna move forward with a letter
the zoning is
asking
fine,
that
yeah.
that be amended and pay the zoning tax.
Right, that wouldn't have anything to do with what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we'll talk. All right, okay.
What's this thing about this,
Okay, so this is just, these items are.
Wait a minute. Dan can't take notes if everybody's talking at one time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, these items are just sort of house cleaning items, and, it's number one. And we're gonna take it to a committee and come back and study these, none of these are any large rush or like that, not that anything's a rush, but. So single family dwellings, there's quite a few, some of our B1 zoning, they're actually single family dwellings that are zone B1, it's not uncommon. A lot of places that you have a house in a B1 zoning. The issue is sometimes we get calls, you know, if this house would be destroyed and they build it back as a by right in B1. So, oh, actually, our B1 zoning doesn't have single family homes as a by right or a special use. So since we have a lot of properties that are B1 that there are dwellings that are currently on, I just thought we'd add it as a by right use.
Just to understand what you're talking about, there was a house on something that was on B1 previously.
Yeah, well, they're just houses on B1.
I know there are in the county.
And sometimes we get like refinancing, or we get calls from, and people say, hey, just want, you know, underwriters wanna know if this was to be destroyed, can they put it back as, you know, on the property, a dwelling, and, well, the code doesn't actually, right now, I guess it'll be grandfathering the houses that are on B1, and I just think it makes sense that we just add single family house as a B1.
So if you have what I'm talking about is you have a piece of property that's zoned B1 business. Okay. No house there, never been a house there. You want to allow people to build a house on property zone B1.
I mean, since there already are quite a few, I
understand that, and that's been going on for many, many years, and before we ever showed up here. But what I'm talking about right now, current today, you have a piece of property that's zoned B1, okay? They wanna build a house on it, residential.
Right.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Okay. Why wouldn't they request to have it rezoned to residential?
Well, they could, but I guess my sort of interest in this was that there were so many houses that are already on B1 that it would just be simple and just
all this zoning stuff up, which it is pretty messed up right now, this isn't gonna help it out any at all. So, that's just my opinion, and I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from here. If you want something zoned residential, you wanna build a house there, then that's the way it should be, because that's the way the ordinance currently reads. So why would you want to do that and just make it worse than what it is already? That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Why would you ever want to downzone a piece of B1 property? I
Would
would,
stay in accordance with the ordinance.
if I owned it as a piece of B1 property, look at the opportunities I got with that piece of property, why would I ever want to downzone?
Can't argue with that. Anybody else? But if we want to look into this in the future, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I would just have to tell, again, it was just sort of, since we have a lot of houses that are already on B1 property, I would just say, can't build that first now.
How many times has that come up?
Probably 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years.
Mr. Rowe, I'm just curious, lenders typically require casualty insurance. So it's not as though their collateral would be at risk if there's a total fire.
Right.
They are the lost payee on that policy. So I'm having a hard time understanding why underwriters would be concerned about this.
I don't know, they just always call and ask, can it be reconstructed, and, does the zoning allow for it? And so, I just like, no, actually, it technically doesn't.
Hey, Mike,
Artie,
could I comment on that?
please.
So, mixed use is the way to go. I think to have a vibrant town, to have a vibrant area, you gotta have rooftops to support businesses. So,
You want to make a note of that? Thank you. Yes. Good suggestion. Anybody else want to chime in on that? We already know about the private road, 4 and 1 and that type of stuff, and the family subdivision issue. Is that what we're talking about here also?
Yeah, on the second one, right, and this is one that I think needs to have some sort of again, it's not pressing, there have been a few questions about this. I think there's one particular individual that has an interest and has asked me, one citizen has brought this up several times, and has told me they're looking at it, but really the 4 and 1 on family divisions, again, it's been sort of as I said, usually family divisions, you are kind of provided with extra benefits that maybe you can't do by right. But if it's a family division, you can do, so. As of now, again, on the 5th lot, on the right of way, the policy was for years that it would be allowable. I just don't think the code is clear. That says you can do that. So that's my only concern. I think by matter of practice, it's been done, but I think the code needs to allow that practice.
You're talking about the family subdivision versus the 4 and 1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Greg? Family subdivision, if somebody's on a private drive like that, and we have a 4 and 1 rule, then we can't stop the family subdivision because of the 4 and 1 rule, can we?
But remember, a subdivision does not necessarily or always mean a residential building lot.
Correct.
What could happen, and I think this is one of those issues where the planning commission and the board of supervisors want to be very careful, because what this represents is a sea change in policy from what Madison County has been doing. Or, well, we're what I'm gonna call the Shackelford era, which I think Shack was the first county attorney, and I think he started in 1974. mention that only because, you know, whenever I would consult with him about these various things after I took over, he said that that had always been a very important consideration for the Board of Supervisors and for the Planning Commission in terms of, making sure that we do not have what are typically below quality roads and subdivisions, and that's what you typically get. Roads in private subdivisions are typically not built to VDOT standards because it's too expensive to build to VDOT standards. However, once those houses are built and once people move into the area, they have a certain expectation of what their roads are going to look like. And it can create some tensions and problems. We've seen in our neighbors to the south in Green County and their Dogwood Valley subdivision are notorious. If you don't believe it, just type in Dogwood Valley and you'll see some articles from The Hook, which was a private newspaper that I guess went out of business about 15 years ago. But it talks about all of the problems that you can have. I mention that because I think that the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors need to consider this very carefully. One way to do this to accommodate it is you can still allow the family subdivision, you know, if that's what people intend, but it's just not a building lot yet. Now, at some point, if the Planning Commission and ultimately the Board of Supervisors makes a determination that these can in fact be building lots and that they have, you know, promulgated some standards for what the roads need to look like, and then, you know, you're in a different area of discussion. Now, VDOT does have some control over these to the extent that any of these have entrances on public roads in terms of what the entrances look like. So you at least have the public safety whenever you're going out on a private highway are taken care of. But in Madison has been fortunate in that it has not had the people who have lots of children and are really just real estate developers where they, you know, lop off all of these lots. But I think one reason for it has been because of the considerations of the limitation on a private road being subject only to 4 dwelling units. And I know that that has not been rigorously enforced. There are some where, you know, people, we had one, 2 years ago where there was essentially a by right use on something where other people had built, you know, houses where they probably should not have been able to. And just all of that to say that this issue is far more complex than it was collected in period.
And I agree wholeheartedly.
Just to make sure you said a sea change, the policy has been to allow families to be the 5th or 6th lot on a private drive.
Okay, that was not my understanding of Ms. Grace. And you could be right about that, but that was not my particular understanding.
Okay, and if it's not, then we're fine. I mean, that's what the Planning Commission board, then it's fine. I was just under the impression, and at least I have seen some subdivisions that were the 5th lot.
And how it got there, nobody knows.
Right.
Yes, I know.
So if that's, you know, they want to keep it like it is, that's not a problem.
And I know some of those, and I haven't been here that long. What I will do with this particular issue is I think it needs to be broken up into some separate discussion issues, and I will figure out how to assign that to somebody on the planning commission to further expand on that, and we can discuss it at our next workshop meeting. Okay?
But I'd like to say something on 2 things relating to this.
Go ahead.
I brought it up last time, the elephant in the room, and we're bringing it up again, is if we're going to consider changing or whatever we do, or enforcing or not enforcing, and I will have to correct you, I think, on that, because I started my land separation subdividing before the previous person left, and a lot of money later, and a whole lot of effort and agony. I hope I have it where I can actually let my children have my land, which is the point. My sister-in-law's in a different place. She's on the same road I am. She's on a very different place. She has no way to give her land to anybody. No way. It's all over this road thing. And this is a farm that's been in our family since 1892. And farmed by our family since 1892. Some member of it. So it is, if that's what it is, it was originally that made, you agreed to limit about safety so much, it wasn't about roads as much as limiting growth, no?
I don't think that was part of that.
No, you had a comment, you said you agreed with me when I made the statement last time. Now, when I made the statement at the last meeting, you chimed in and said, yes, that was the reason those ordinances were put in place then.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't put those in.
No, I didn't mean that, no. Me.
Yeah, I disagree.
You have the
That's why they were put in
You
place.
have the historical knowledge of that. No, you said it was, no, I didn't make use of that at all, no. I just think that if that's the attitude we have still, then we don't want families to have it, we don't want anybody to have this. It does create a problem, because not all land way back was created with access to a public road. And I don't know what we plan to do about that, but it's gonna come much, much more to it, because you're gonna see families trying to do something with their land. Much like the Estes family is trying to do right now with their land. And you made the comment that you wanted to keep the land in Madison County. Now, it certainly is not gonna look anything like agricultural land when we get through with it. And I'm totally for it, I mean, I truly am. But it's gonna be very different. So we're gonna have that. I know there have been pieces of land that have been bought in this county where there's a 50 house, subdivision, a 25 house subdivision, an apartment house. We're bringing in all of this development, whether or not we approve it, whether or not it's gonna fit or not, I don't know. But then some little poor family-owned farm that's trying to survive and getting ready to pass on and try to protect the family and keep the children in the area so they can either develop a business or at least live here. We can't do it. And like I said, it was very costly for me to do what I did. But I hope it's state law, and that's where we're gonna go with it. I just think we need to have a discussion, is this where we are? Is this what we want before we start tampering with, and making more strict some of these ordinances that are of this, just this one little area. I'm just concerned about what we look like and where we're going. I think if we do a better job of planning what we want it to look like and what we want to do, like Cardi mentions mixed zoning in an area such as where you would have a residential. That would be, I'm sure there's a way to do it. I'm sure there is. Taking into account, and that's a big statement, but it is such a thing I need to talk about. The other thing is the road maintenance agreement. I've had one since 1982 with all my various neighbors, and every time the house is sold again, they come to me with this little piece of paper, they say, what is this about? And because it's recorded at the courthouse, it comes up when they do the title search on their land. So anyway, no, I'm just saying, I'm acting it, my road is finished, and my neighbors are paid, and it works. Because I've got nice neighbors too, so nobody's fighting me. No, I'm just, we can make some of this work if it's about the road. Sorry.
All right, we can discuss all of that and we address these items. I will have to figure out who to assign this to and how to proceed on that, but some of these things have to be split up. Okay. Any other questions on that particular item on the agenda? Any comments, any statements from the public?
I would just like you to summarize what you all discussed about this, about Form 1. You know, you had your personal issues, but just sum this up, this issue.
Well, the Form 1 is pretty clear in the ordinance today. You can only have 4 lots on the gravel drive.
Because the reason I'm asking, to give you a perfect example, and I'm with you on some of this, with your concern, like on my road, somebody's selling a plot of land, here's the advertiser, realty agent saying, hey, you can put 2 houses here and do this and this. I mean, he wants to get a commission himself. I'm sure if somebody tried to buy it, they would find out they can't do that because of the road, just like what you're saying. Because it's only ready for one more house, and they're already advertising, oh, we can do this, and this, and this, and they're saying this, and this is one of the reasons I just wanted to sit here and listen.
Mr. Webb and ask him.
Pardon me?
You always go to Mr. Webb and ask him about these type of issues. And if you need a copy of the ordinance, there's one in the county library that explains all of that.
Online too?
Well, it's funny, because when you go and you look at some of this stuff, like you say, and the history and the way it's written, and you have great neighbors, well, we've got a neighbor who won't pay anything for the road, but it's a private road, and you can show all this stuff all day, and it's not worth take it to court because of what, every X number of years, you do this,
And what is your name?
Lisa Davis, Locustdale.
Yeah, and my just be, and I'm not in any way in faith at the point of talking about the past before I came. I just kind of been confused because I have seen some, and I'm not saying that it was done, you know, it might have been even before these lots could be grandfathered and before Betty was around, so that's not my intent, is I'm just a little confused on the family subdivision, so as of now, and again, the way I have been telling folks is that, you know, the 4 and 1, even for family, is still in force. And some folks said, no, we did, you know, so I said, well, wait, so that's why I'm calling it.
Okay, and I agree, we need some clarification on that, and I think we ought to include it as agenda item in the future, and try to get to the bottom of this, and maybe help, improve the ordinance and recommend it to the Board of Supervisors and see what they want to do.
Okay, and I'll just, not to steal your thunder, but on item 3, it's the same thing, just an issue that's been kind of on the periphery as far as the lot width. Doesn't get a lot of heartburn in the way. It just, again, as I said in my rationale, it seems to sometimes be, there's some fairly buildable lots out there that maybe have 225 foot of width. Remember, it's gonna be measured either way, up or down, sideways. That could be totally, you know, good buildable lots that seem to be a premium these days, and this sort of seems to be kind of an arbitrary sort of barrier that at least some folks would like to see lifted. I don't like it, doesn't give me a big heartburn either way, but I do think from a looking at the setbacks, you know, you meet your side setbacks, you meet your front setbacks, your minimum lot acreage. I just why I tend to think that the width is kind of an arbitrary sort of, you got people kind of doing gymnastics trying to get through this, and it really, to me, doesn't really achieve anything other than you have 250 feet. You have 200 feet, that would still be a safe lot, but there's plenty of room and you can get around it. And, so that's sort of my logic on that.
Okay, something to review, something to work on. There's a lot in that paragraph 5C, for sure. Okay, Mandy, we were at the last Board of Supervisor meeting on 7/13, anything you would like to inform us about?
Well, it was a very long meeting. They had the folks from REC and the people from Firefly to make presentations about the broadband, and had the website to go do the survey so that they can determine where are unserved and underserved areas in Madison for broadband. It had the speeds and the cost would be included, and I tried to do that, and I couldn't take the survey because my internet was too slow. I'll keep trying. And then a number of these things that Lincoln had, he had a whole list of things to be brought up, and several of them got pushed back to committee or stopped because of the cell tower, and I think referred back. And that was, there was some discussion about it, but it really was almost 2 hours. Oh, and the guy from Community Services Board gave a report, which is really good, and I went and thanked him because he really is taking note that Madison County has mental health, behavioral health, substance abuse, senior services, and he's actually here giving updates on what they're doing, and seems to be very approachable, and that's a real good breath of fresh air.
And we announced who the new county administrator was.
Well, I left, I had to go take my exhibits to be entered in the county fair.
It was the best kept secret in Madison County.
That Jonathan Weekly is our county administrator. So,
I've only known
starting
for a month.
August
16.
Never played, isn't it good?
When's he start? More important.
And they did, Jacqueline Fry is retiring, she's been the clerk for, long, 20-some years.
Right after 20 years.
And so y'all did a resolution and a chair for her, and that was very nice. She's seen lots of ups and downs, and is always cheerful, and hung right in here with us, and did a resolution for Jack Hobbs as well.
They will both be missed. Jacqueline did a great job. She was a good person to go talk to.
She was.
Gonna miss her.
And there were 4 of us there at one time, so we worked, we had to, we learned about, that only 2 of us could speak.
Only one, actually. It's Mr. Greg pointed out. Okay. Last thing on my agenda here is, Faith. We talked to this lady, Christine Farr.
There.
Did you make any progress? Is there anything going on there at all?
I have her updated, comments on some of our ordinances. Most of them I can address. And I don't know how much, I guess I need to call the committee if they want to address them themselves, or I just tell her what I think of some of them. Because I know some of them are not the help food industry in this county. They're not.
I wonder, maybe I saw one of them.
I'll work that out. I'll try to get something done on that by next month, so she can, at least get some resolution on what she's proposed.
Great, I just wanna make sure we're not addressing that lady's
No,
concerns.
we're not forgetting her.
Okay. Any comments, input from the audience? Yes?
Me? Say something? She's shaking her head.
Him have an opinion?
Thank you all very much. Oh, anything else from the planning commission? If not, thank you all very much for coming. Hopefully you get find some useful information for everyone tonight. Move things forward.